John Maxwell once said that everything rises and falls on leadership. And that's why today, Leadership Africa brings you an in-depth study of leadership as seen from, number one, a historical perspective. Now, looking at Africa from history, there are many scholars who feel that the past historians demonstrated a bias, and this bias has worked against this continent in many ways. For 4+ centuries, white historians represented Africa as a failed continent. Later on, the scramble for Africa ensued and witnessed Europe and other continents invade Africa, dividing up Africa without restraint. For example, the Germans, the English, the French, the Belgians, Dutch, as well as the Spaniards, each wanted a piece of Africa then. This onslaught divided up families and communities without any consideration. A classic example is the boundary separating Kenya and Tanzania. They simply drew a straight line from Mwanza to the Indian Ocean without considering that the Kurias, the Maasai, and the Chagas were going to be split up into two by the same line, which forms the boundary between Tanzania and Kenya. But one may argue that that was a long time ago. Why is Africa left behind, even after many nations have attained self-rule? Is Africa unable to rule herself? It all directs us to the question of leadership. In the earlier days of independence of Africa, the African nations gained independence. There was a great promise of hope as they joined the World's League of Nations and were classified as emerging young nations, vibrant, hopeful. But 50+ years, these nations are still struggling to provide basic needs, such as food and shelter, to their citizens. What is the problem? It is simply leadership. When the righteous rule and are in authority, people rejoice. But when the wicked rule, people mourn. Now, this is a direct and simple sign and indicator that Africa has been ruled by wicked, by people who do not care about the well-being of Africa, and because of that, Africa has been mourning. In many instances, Africa has been considered to be a mourning or a weeping continent. Why? It's simply because of poor leadership. Now, the poor nations of Africa lack capacity to maintain integrity because poverty precipitates compromise. In many ways, Africa has gone through rigors of poverty and neglect. And because of that, sometimes we use a very arrogant term, rape. Many people don't like that. But Africa has been raped. First by the colonialists who came in. But today, what's going on in Africa? The same process going on. By who? By the Africans themselves. What is the problem? I'd like to take you to the prophecy of a man by the name of Agur, the son of Jake. He was an oracle. And he declares to his disciples or his students, two of them are called Ithiel as well as Ukal. You can read this one in the book of Proverbs, chapter 30, verse 1 to 17. A proverb and a riddle. And he says that the horse leech has two daughters. And these daughters incessantly cry out, give, give. That means they don't get satisfied. Now, there are 4 things that Agur says he observed from this research that he made. And he says that these 4 things he realized they have something in common. They never say enough. One, the grave. The grave does not say enough. Africa has had enough share of dictators. And every time a dictator is in rule, more and more graves are opened, more graves are dug, and more people, Africans themselves, are buried. The graves have never said enough today. We still bury our dead out of wars and conflict. The second one is a barren womb. A womb that never says enough. Africa is a womb. And Africa is endowed with wealth and resources. Yet, Africa does not produce. Africa is not productive. Africa has never benefited Africans. It's a barren womb that refuses to bring forth. The third one is the ground that receives rain, but does not bring forth. The produce, the seed sown on it, does not germinate to provide food. Africa is simply a corrupt continent. Embezzlement of public resources is a story that has been told over and over. Africa is corrupt. The corruption in Africa has reached such levels that is compared to a ground that does not grow or produce, yet it receives rain. The fourth one is the fire that cannot be quenched. Agur is talking about our circumstances in Africa. The fire that cannot be quenched. The fire that consumes without restraint. Africa is known for conflict, for wars, warlords. When you talk about warlords, you're talking about Africa. Look at Somalia. Look at Congo. Africa has been burning, and it has never been quenched. Even today, we are still killing our own. Agur is right in many instances. But what we say, because there's hope, and we must have hope. Africa must be hopeful. In the words of Isaiah, the prophet, he says, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you." This is a story of Africa. Africa must arise. Africa must shine. For God is giving Africa a second chance. Leadership is a problem. But what is leadership? I want to tell you a little story about myself. My journey into leadership. My journey into recognizing that I have a call for leadership. It began when I was only 10 years old. A son to parents who are teachers, and therefore at that early age I had the privilege of handling chalk and duster. And I was able to scribble and draw on that blackboard. And many children in the village used to come around me, and I was pretending or acting as a teacher. I didn't know what I was drawing, but I knew I was drawing some kind of map on that board. Now, this little action that I carried out at that age made my grandfather love me. He realized, he saw something in me that I believe was rising above other children in the village. I was only 10 years old. So one day, he called me and told me that he wants to walk with me. We'll go on a little journey. We'll be back in the evening. I was excited because as always, when I'm walking with my grandfather, there are always goodies along the way. And for sure, this day had a promise for the same. So we took off and went to the nearby village. We crossed the river and went over. And we arrived there safely, and we were welcomed warmly by the villagers. And sooner or later, we as children were left outside to play, and we were playing as the mothers were preparing lunch The old men, the old people were in a room somewhere. We could hear voices, we could hear laughter. And once in a while, we could see somebody coming out and going to ease themselves in the urinals. And we knew that they must have been drinking in there. So lunch came and we were served lunch. That was a very delicious lunch for me. It made my day. Later on, my grandfather came out, emerged and told me, let's go home. So we started walking back to the village. I was ahead of him. I was walking because I knew rain was coming. So we needed to go in a hurry. But I didn't know that my father was actually taking too much of that drink. And sooner or later, thereafter, I heard, to my amazement, a very big noise behind me. When I looked back, I saw him. He was on the floor, on the ground. I tried to make a decision whether to run away or to come back and help him. This thing has never happened to me before. I've never seen this before. So I came back and helped him rise up from the ground. And we started again on the journey. A few minutes later, the same noise. I looked back, my grandfather was down. I raised him up again. We started on again. Third time, he went down. Now, this time round, I had to make a decision. We were nearing home. But I realized that my grandfather needed somebody to lead him into that village. It was getting dark. He was drunk. And I realized the whole import of why he called me on that journey. He knew I could faithfully lead him back to the village so that he doesn't get lost on the way. So I kept my distance. It was beginning to rain, but I kept my distance so that he could see me and follow me into the village. Sooner or later, we arrived home. Something surprising. I forgot about the whole incident. I never told anybody, not even my parents, about it. I never even discussed it with him. Till today, I'm discussing it with you. But I look back and I see, yes, my grandfather saw some leadership qualities in me. And I, though I was about 10 years old only, he could rely on me to lead him back home into the village. What is leadership? Let us begin by stating what leadership is not. Leadership is not merely a role that one plays, but it's a life that one lives. The passion with which the late Martin Luther King Jr. fought to liberate the African American blacks, that passion was hinged on leadership values that he held. The passion of Nkrumahs, the Kenyattas, the Mandelas, to emancipate their people from the chains of white domination are classical till today. Examples are many that we can give. But there's a quotation I want to make at this point that says, you can only grow to the extent of your pain. You can only grow to the extent of your pain. Africa has pained for many years, yet Africa has not grown. What has gone wrong? Again, leadership. Good and effective leadership is manifested during crisis. For it is in times like these when opportunities happen for leaders to redeem themselves, and this happens all over the world. All crises have something in common that are usually unexpected, and as such, they never get prepared for. A crisis may be an event, but it set in motion a ripple effect that touches many other sectors. The health sector, the economic sector, the education sector, the labor sector, the cultures, the religions, and social fabric. Ginny Rometty, the CEO of IBM, once said that growth and comfort do not coexist. By nature, crisis has the potential to exchange routine for creativity and shift the normal situation from business as usual into significant change. Now, this is very key. This is very key. Furthermore, crisis has the potential to divide the organization's past from its future, replacing insecurity with security, effective from ineffective ones. That is leadership coming out of a crisis. Are we in a crisis? Do we have a crisis in our hands? We are just coming out from the rigors of Corona. Some people are saying this is a second wave emerging. So we still have a crisis in our hands. Are we able to survive this crisis and be able to make the change that we need to make based on the crisis experience? There are two scenarios that we need to consider here. The first scenario is the negative impacts of crisis. High stress levels, which ends up in emotional chaos. Post-crisis common emotions are including fear, anger, anxiety, sorrow, surprise, shock, disgust, and revenge. And this we have seen in many, many areas in the lives of the men and women in this country and in Africa and in the world at large. People are fearful. They don't know about tomorrow. Businesses have failed. Many people have lost their employment. There's anger. People have killed one another. Anxiety. Homes have been broken and sorrow. Many have been laid to rest and buried without knowing what the future holds. The second point is turning crisis into opportunity. And the response of these emotions are key. Crisis brings out courage, honor, selflessness, loyalty, and other positive behavior, and promoting confidence in personal growth. We have learned this from the scene in Kenya, where many people have come out courageously to be able to confront and mitigate some of the effects that are negative in our community. And by doing so, they have helped and encouraged those who are down, lifted up those who are come to the end of themselves, and bestowed honor to those who are honorable. Selflessness and loyalty and other positive behavior, and we have seen that, promoting confidence in personal growth. Also, we learn about our own strength of character and limitations. It is proven that whatever survives a crisis emerges better and stronger than before, and effective leaders must look for opportunity for further advancement where there were only advantages. Ryan Freitas, another quote, he says, "Your reputation is more important than your paycheck, and your integrity is worth more than your career." Talking about reputation, is talking about a name. And this is an agreement in the Proverbs 22, verse 1, which says, "A good name is better than a chosen, is better rather to be chosen than great riches." Leadership character is important. Character of a leader is the cradle of credibility. Without a strong, noble, honorable character, one's achievement in life is in the danger of cancellation. So a leader must develop good character. A leader must develop a good name. A leader must maintain a good reputation, because it will pay back at a later date. Every leader is only as safe as his character. Every leader is only safe as her character trait. The longevity of one's achievement depends on it. An example of a renowned professor, he's an old friend of mine, but he has gone to be with the Lord. One day he was caught at a New York airport having in his suitcase a hotel towel, towel that belonged to the hotel. He was disgraced at the airport. This little folly dented his character. He didn't know that this story would reach home, but it did. So sooner or later, people looked at him differently. Although he was a full professor, with all the dignity, with all the honor, but people looked at him differently, including myself. It taught me a lesson. Longevity of organizations or nations will only be sustained by character of its leaders. And the foundation of ethics is the key to its success. Consider these things as we continue on with Leadership Africa. Charismatic leaders, but without character. Gifted leaders, immensely gifted, but without conviction. Powerful leaders, with a great following, but without principles. Intellectual leaders, highly learned, but without morals. Visionary leaders, and Africa is not in shortage of them, but without values. And finally, spiritual leaders without conscience. Consider these things. Thank you.